Hey there, everybody. We're just going to give folks a couple more minutes to jump on in here. Hey, Trellis team, if you could kick out the other person who's sharing and let Renee in. I'm not exactly sure how to do that. That would be extremely helpful. Herschel Shaw, if you the video, that would be appreciated so we could get Renee in to join the panel. Thank you.
Yep.
Renee, you should be able to jump in now. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Just going through the technical piece just to get our final speaker on here. All right. So it looks like we are unfortunately unable to get Renee into the session due to technical difficulties, but Matt, you're able to jump back on here?
Yep, here you go.
There you are. All right. Awesome. So if everybody who's on the line, if you could just double click, what'll help is if you double click on the PowerPoint presentation and the set on one of the tiles there, and we should be able to get started. Apologies for running a little bit behind here and for the technical difficulties, but just wanted to wish everyone a good afternoon. Matt and I, and unfortunately Renee is not able to join because of those difficulties, but we'd like to thank everyone for joining today. First, definitely want to give a big thank you and big shout out to Trellis team for inviting us to kick off today's event. Super excited to lead the inaugural session for today's series. As we all know, and we heard it in the last presentation, we're living in very interesting times. COVID-19 is in real time actively reshaping the commerce landscape. Many of you are probably asking a lot of questions, but one of the key questions that we continue to hear from many companies we work with is, what should we be thinking about right now to prepare for the short, medium, and long-term uncertainty in the supply chain? And just in general, I think Matt and I can agree that the answer is that it depends. Depending on the products your business sells, you could either be evaluating opportunities for improvement across your business, or your brand may have struck gold because you're sitting in a thriving essential vertical. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle, but regardless of the situation, many folks are asking the same question. We know that our topic, supply chain, is definitely antiquated. It's not sexy, and yes, it certainly can be difficult. However, we're hyper aware that if you consciously can create flexibility within it, there's many opportunities to reduce costs without sacrificing customer experience. So in the next 20 to 25 minutes, Matt and I are going to discuss trends our partners and customers have been seeing in the supply chain. This is going to include both the supply chain diversification and systemic infrastructure that set up pre-COVID-19, as well as sharing insight into how to adapt to the current times. So Matt and I will give a quick introduction. We'll go through some of the trends we're seeing. We're going to talk about the trends and impact. We're going to go through supply chain and systems pre-COVID-19 and today, with a focus on systemic infrastructure and supply chain diversification. And then we'll cover, if we have time, we'll cover key takeaways and wrap up. So by the end of this session, ultimately, we want to provide education, answer some questions and that you might be asking yourselves, and arm you with actionable insights and possible next steps within your own supply chain, all while cost effectively building a flexible systemic infrastructure and diversifying your supply chain. If you have questions, feel free to chat through our session and we'll do our best to answer them. Matt and I are going to be available for a little bit afterwards at our virtual booths. There are virtual booths in this program to answer anything we're not able to get to. So, we want to first provide intros and let you know who we are and jump right in. So we'll go right into Celigo here. We're a complete integration platform as a service built for both IT and business users. I personally, Jeremy Rudolph, have over a decade of experience in Silicon Valley software, designing, developing, deploying, and operationalizing software as a service and cloud architecture solutions for SMBs, mid-market, and enterprise. And essentially have worked with companies all the way from startup who hasn't launched a product, all the way up to enterprises such as Walmart, Alcatel Wireless, and Tencent. Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Sure. So I am Matt Carpentieri, the Director of Partnerships here at Ruby Has Fulfillment. Ruby Has is an e-commerce fulfillment provider for direct-to-consumer brands and retailers. We were actually ranked by Crain's 50 for the past 2 years, and Inc. 5,000 top-growing companies for the past 4 years for consumer brands and retailers. And we are a preeminent global fulfillment platform providing an enterprise-level end-to-end supply chain ecosystem to omni-channel brands, regardless of size. Renee, I'll flip it over to you.
Hi, I finally made it in. Hopefully you guys can all hear me. Hi, I'm Renee. I'm a project manager at Thinx, specifically working on systems and integrations. Thinx is a period underwear brand. It's been around for around 6 years now. We're natively D2C. If you live in New York City, you may know us from our subway ads. We definitely made a bit of a ruffle when we came out with that, which was pretty exciting for us. Recently, we've moved into wholesale, as well as we've had a couple pop-up stores. And what we're really focusing on right now in our business is really centralizing all of our systems and information into one point to really give one source of truth, as well as really enable our team members to work more efficiently.
Excellent, excellent. So I'll jump into the next slide. If you can flip it over, Jeremy. Excellent. So obviously right now we're living in an age of toilet paper flying off the shelves and retailers like Neiman Marcus and J. Crew filing for bankruptcy. So Jeremy and I wanted to kind of take a pulse of our partners and customers, what trends we were seeing and what decisions that they are trying to make, which also led to asking, follow-up questions, right? So one of the first ones we've really heard quite often is we've seen a 50% decline in our business. And the first thought is, prioritize. The next thing we heard is we may have to let go of 30% of our staff. And can we redirect them to other areas of our business? Can we reprioritize those resources to more important areas? Visitors are consuming more content. What we're seeing is buyers without kids are consuming a lot more content on the web and on mobile, since there is more time, but they are not converting. How do we get them to convert? Customers' delivery expectations have declined. What we do see in general is that Amazon sets the norm for delivery with returns expectations. What is the best way to communicate with your customers? And then some of the feedback actually has been very positive. We have seen a 10 times growth in the past 30 days. How do we create better efficiencies to manage this growth through this time of uncertainty? How do we create that foundation for future growth? So we talked about commerce trends, but we're specifically seeing e-commerce trends changing quickly, which is impacting shopping behavior, demand, and order fulfillment, amongst many others. Renee, I'll ask you this. What are some of the trends you are seeing in your business during this period of relative to e-commerce, and what impacts does it have on your systematic and supply chain infrastructure?
So we're I think one of the lucky few that's actually seen an increase in sales. We're actually 40%, our sales are 40% higher than they were at this time last year. And I think given what our product does and how it affects people's lives, it's given our customers an opportunity to sort of safely test their product in their own home. So that's, I think, why we've seen an uptick. It's also, as you mentioned, we're running out of toilet paper and tampons, et cetera. So it's also sort of a great time for people who are like, oh, maybe I should think of alternate solutions and think of something that is more environmentally friendly, and I don't have to rely on a grocery store to take care of myself on a monthly basis. So in ensuring we can get product to all of our customers, we've done a couple things like moving some product to an additional warehouse at a different location, in that we were worried that perhaps our New York warehouse could get shut down since it was definitely more of a serious outbreak here. So that's something that we did just to sort of have a little bit of a safety stock. We've also taken a look at our sale cadence and sort of moved out some of our bigger sales to later in the year to ensure we have longer amounts of supply, given that it's a little bit more difficult to get our inventory out of our factory right now. And, so also looking at sort of our larger supply chain and seeing how we can diversify that for future events like this as well.
So Renee, just a quick question for you. Why do you think it's so important to streamline operations and automate business processes in times like these? You mentioned that your business is very successful, and some of the folks on this call might be experiencing the opposite. Maybe talking a little bit about some of the things that you did pre-COVID-19 that you think set you up for success today, and then some things that you think why they were important to streamline and automate your processes.
So we are sort of in this transition phase at Thinx with our system. So we're really looking at how we're currently doing things and how we want to sort of map our processes going forward to be more efficient, and really using systems and integrations, especially those that we are doing the Celigo. I think I'm working on like 7 or 8 different integration projects right now. And ensuring we have that one source of truth, moving all of our integrations sort of to one platform, and really streamlining that gives confidence to the employees at the company, and that way they know what they're seeing is accurate. It also, when you have a more integrated system and you have a holistic approach with your systems, it does give you the opportunity to be a little bit more efficient, do less on Excel, and really like try to actually like create reports to automatically send out, and really alleviate some of those, like, okay, now I have to export it and send it to that person. You can really do little things like that like they take 5 minutes to do in a system, but it will really kind of give that data at people's fingertips. And so I always like to say, give people the tools to help themselves so they're not constantly having to ask around, especially as we're seeing workforces shrink. That way you can spend less time doing those like little annoying things.
Yeah, and I got to imagine if data, it's almost like the left hand's not talking to the right, and you're spending a lot more time on those manual processes versus thinking about, one, how you can potentially cut more costs and make better decisions, and 2, how to create more flexibility in your network.
Exactly. And I think also just having a really good understanding of like of our inventory, for example, like really making sure that that integration is very solid, has been helpful, and giving our planning team tools to know, like, okay, this is really how much supply we have, and this is really what we need to push our factory to get to us so we can really meet the demand of the customer.
Awesome. Thanks. And I think that's a perfect transition. Meeting the demand of the customer. Why is it important? Why is it so important at this time? The customer experience starts to become very important right now, especially. You're not going to be able to afford having negative experiences leading to loss of customers. And if you lose a customer in this ever-changing environment, it's going to be really difficult to earn them back. So there's just some metrics on the slide here from HubSpot and KPMG. And kind of going back to what Matt was saying, in the age of Amazon, really we've been conditioned as buyers to expect same-day delivery. I personally ordered a bike pump the other day for my son's bike, and it took over 3 weeks. It's going to take over 3 weeks to get to my house. My son's not happy when I have to tell him that we're going to have to wait a little bit before he can ride again. And so right now, those types of expectations are being set by Amazon, but there are a lot of things that you as a business can do to kind of get ahead of that and get in front of your customer. And we wanted to go through a few of those today. So relative to the buyer experience, I'm not going to read what's on here on the slides. I think we should look at the way that your supply chain was structured prior to COVID-19, or how supply chain in general was structured prior to COVID-19, and then talk about some of the efficiencies you can gain by restructuring it. We're going to provide specific takeaways across the chain that will ultimately benefit your buyer experience. We have a lot of content on the slides, so we're going to go as quickly as we possibly can here to jump through it here. So here we can see an example visual for what a product lifecycle looks like within the supply chain. Every part of the supply chain has or could have an aspect of physical warehouse infrastructure or digital technology, as well as the human people behind the scenes. So physical, digital, and human. And let's just choose apparel as an example, specifically dress, going through the supply chain. Your supply chain may not go that far back, but if it does, either way, it's important to understand that COVID-19 could affect each milestone within the supply chain. So before, raw materials would start with that dress, producing the thread, the colors, shipping to the supplier. The supplier would then be creating the fabric with the thread, and another could be creating your packaging, shipping to the manufacturer, and then going from the manufacturer to your distribution center. that distribution center ships that dress the final mile. And the final mile could be, in this case, a customer, where it's a retailer or retail store, or your end consumer, your end customer. So pre-COVID-19, many of us have had the luxuries of having all these on demand and available on the supply side. We've really been able to leverage economies of scale with supply side anchor clients within those certain segments of the supply chain. So having massive buyers in the either supplier or manufacturer or raw material space to anchor with those factories. And right now, what we're seeing, we're seeing companies like Gap and Zara canceling their orders. And it really is of March 31st this year. Reuters recently reported that the Bangladesh knitwear manufacturers and Exporters Association lost more than $3 billion due to the crisis. And all of those companies' orders have been canceled or suspended, and that many factories might start closing if it persists. So let's look at some ways that you can start thinking about supply chain flexibility. And I'm going to start knocking out these one by one along the milestones and talking through it. So many of these examples can apply to multi-facets within the supply chain. So if your raw materials get knocked out, you no longer have the thread to make that dress. What happens if your supplier goes bankrupt in these times? Do you know where you are in the pecking order with your suppliers? Really, some of the things that you can do is invest in automation, where you can stay a step ahead of the competition. If you don't have a PLM or an MRP, product lifecycle management, or materials resource planning system, it might be time to start thinking about one. If your product lifecycle has all these pieces within the supply chain and goes this deep, start evaluating and investing in other raw materials providers and diversify risk and create flexibility. So flexibility in supply chain and sourcing and resilient supply chain is going to start giving you options, and these multi-sourcing models will incur higher costs in the short run, but in time, you're going to have more reliable partners. And these are themes that are going to kind of play across most of these segments of the supply chain. I'm going to speed it up a little bit and probably not go through all my content on this slide, but I think it's probably important just to ask Renee kind of what are some of the things that you guys have seen across raw materials supplier and manufacturer today that that you guys have been able to, or where you guys have had to adapt, or potentially where you set up infrastructure in case one of these pieces of your supply chain moves?
Yeah, so we're sort of in a little bit of a unique situation in that we only have one manufacturer, and they do all our raw material ordering, et cetera, for us. They are also investors in our company, so they have an interest in ensuring that we're also getting product, as quickly as possible. With that said, it's definitely, and this is something we've been talking about even before COVID-19, is diversifying our manufacturing so we have more flexibility. So the difficult part with that is it's not something you can really action on very quickly. You have to be sort of forward thinking. You have to it takes about a year and a half to onboard a new manufacturer, as you have to get the samples. And, especially with our product, we have to ensure the quality is really, really top notch. So this is, I think, is giving us an additional push to really look at diversifying that for us for sure. We were also we're lucky that our manufacturer is in Sri Lanka, and they were actually very, very strict with their lockdown from the get-go. So they're actually at 50% capacity already, which is really exciting to see. And we're going to be starting shipments going out in the next few weeks. So what we're also doing is we're actually paring down our assortment a little bit, focusing on what really sells, what our customers really looking for, and focusing on getting that out, because since they are still at 50% of capacity, and they could be for a while, and we don't know if there will be a second wave. It's important to us to make sure we really have the product that the customer is asking for.
Yeah, and I assume you're doing that by evaluating those fast movers or slow movers through
Exactly.
systems, right?
Yeah, so that's the thing is we use a couple different analysis tools, and then through our integrations too, really looking at our sales and then also really what's on hand. And what's great about integrating everything into an ERP is we have 3 warehouses in 3 different countries. So now we're going to have all our inventory in one place. So you're really able to pull an inventory report that is your whole company's inventory versus just pulling little reports here and there and trying to make sense of them. And then also really getting all of our wholesale sales and our e-com sales in one place, so you can really better capture what we really are, sending out the door.
Yeah, absolutely. So Matt, why don't you go into, just based on your subject matter expertise, what happens when the distribution piece of the supply chain may get knocked out here?
Thanks, Jeremy. So going into the distribution and fulfillment portion, we'll work off the same example on the dress. So say, my customer ordered the dress and my fulfillment center won't ship it because either they're 2 weeks behind or, because there is a COVID-19 outbreak in one of my 3PLs. So your own warehouse or 3PL may be struggling to get orders out the door. Across the board, volumes in warehouses and carrier networks look like peak, a term generally used for Q4, and the availability of specialized labor is low, causing severe impacts to service levels. For example, they come into work or they have to take care of family members, and you may be asking yourself, how can I, the brand, solve this problem? What if most of my inventory is ready to ship on pallets or case packs? What do I need to do? So some of the suggestions that we have that we're seeing from this environment that we suggest from what our experiences and what we've seen is to, one, diversify your portfolio with segregation of inventory across multiple locations and quickly learn how to connect to their WMS. SKU revamp, run reporting to shift your supply investment to your best sellers and market those best sellers, pairing them with slower moving items at a discount to reduce holding costs of low turning inventory. And you could do this by running A/B testing and really just see what works best. The thing to really emphasize here is increasing your buyer's basket size with promotions on slow moving add-ons. You can really create greater final mile shipping efficiencies to make your orders profitable. The other thing else I would suggest is to invest in systems that allow you to run reports on this, run the analyses across your product portfolio to understand velocity and holding costs, whether it's 30, 60, 90-day velocity, hand reporting, top and bottom 10% sellers, and just you want to be able to make faster decisions. This will help you determine where margins are tied up and structure warehouses' terms on where to focus their labor, cut costs on non-essentials, and quickly create flexibility in your supply chain. And then just going into the customers and consumers, the customer / consumer is dictating a different profile. The normal supply chain measured in pallets and trucks is now moving really into eaches. Consumers being a retail buyer like Walmart, Target, etc., or retail store shopper, and a consumer being an online buyer. Partly because it's safer to deliver online, there is a 4 to 5 times increase overall in the last couple of months with UPS. It is interesting since the makeup is different, with carriers seeing a vast surge in residential deliveries. And 2, there is little physical infrastructure. Deliver same volume to end consumers at much more higher costs. You really are losing the economies of scale.
Yeah, and I think just to pause you there, I know we're getting close to time, but I think that's a really important point, that from the volume shifting from the from retail and store shipments to direct to consumer, the cost to ship a direct to consumer order is significantly higher because you're not getting those economies of scale with your shipping. You're not right now. Air freight has gone up 4 to 6x. Ocean freight has gone down, but the time for ocean freight obviously takes a lot longer. And ocean freight's gone down or maintained steady depending on who you work with because of the prices of fuel. So everything's kind of interconnected right now. And just if you have margins to support the 4 to 5x increase, great in air, but it may be time to provide that visibility to your customers that, hey, things are going to take a little bit longer. Maybe we have this particular product on pre-order for you, and we're going to ship it out in 6 weeks. Instead of a customer ordering the product, they're going to your website and having an experience where they're waiting 2 weeks, not necessarily getting that communication, and it overall could potentially have impact on your brand. So that's something I just wanted to add there.
Exactly right. And then, since we have short time, I want to get into the returns real quick. Customers receive the dress, but it doesn't fit right. You may have an easy way for her to return it. For example, say this is the 57th return this week, and say customer support person is really getting burnt out. Some solutions may be to redeploy individuals who aren't doing their day-to-day jobs, and you want to focus them to the customer support, to your frontline workers. Keep these loyal employees on payroll and dedicated to the business. Returns handling, have you developed a process for it? Have you made the processes easy? If not, right now is probably one of the best times to start thinking about it, or filling in your customer during checkout ahead of time if their product is non-returnable, to create better buy cycle experience. If your customer can receive your product and return it within 1 week, this may be a good way to drive loyalty. Right now, demand is overwhelming supply. The next generation of retailers has the opportunity to reinvent themselves. I wanted to ask you, Renee, what are some of the key tools that you use to help your companies automate their business processes, especially if they aren't completely rich in technical know-how?
Well, like on the topic of Loop or in returns, we use Loop, which has been like a really great tool for our CX team. And so it's something like they don't really have to get involved in the technical much at all, because that system is so automated. And sort of also going back to like making sure our customers are comfortable, we do have a 2-year return policy for our product, just to ensure that it works well and they're happy with it. So that's sort of our guarantee. And so having that, that returns process really helps alleviate a lot of manual processes for our customer care team, for sure. It really creates a lot of efficiencies. I used to do customer care once upon a time, and I had to create labels. It's not fun. So it's really exciting to see these great return softwares come out that really, really help, for sure.
Excellent.
That's awesome. Thanks, Renee. I'm just gonna skip over the next couple slides here, and we'll definitely get these slides out to folks after the presentation. These 2 slides just real briefly talk about the supply chain infrastructure via automation, as well as via diversification, just the topics we covered on the previous slide, and how do you cut costs and how do you scale. So we'll definitely make sure that we get these slides out after the fact here. And really, in conclusion, some of the product life cycles in the supply chains are different than others. So you're really going to want to figure out how to best use automation and diversification to create flexibility and cost-saving methods for your own business. So the key is really going to be to act quicker than others as demand patterns start to shift, and having the right tools in place to provide that flexibility to bring costs down using data and technology, just as Renee said, that are going to provide you with options to make better decisions and make them faster. So this may actually mean higher upfront costs short term, but in the long term, it prevents you from continuously having to pivot, which can significantly be more expensive. In doing this is going to allow you to cut costs and provide more flexibility in your supply chain. So you may be asking yourself, how do I strike the proper balance? Really do your research and invest in the systems that are ultimately going to allow you to make quicker and better decisions to create the right mix of diversification and flexibility within your own supply chain infrastructure. Before we go, and we'll try to do this quickly, one last thing here. What is one piece of advice that you would give to someone in similar shoes who's deciding whether to invest in operational improvements? And do you think it makes sense for companies to engage in operational improvements at a time where they might just be trying to survive? Renee, why don't you go first?
I think you made a really good point about, like, yes, the cost of getting systems it's high up front, but what it saves you in efficiency ends up saving you way more money, especially since we are lean. These are lean times where we're trying to, unfortunately, maybe you can't have as many freelancers, et cetera. So I would just take a look at what, all your different departments are doing, what their biggest pain points are, and really like investigating what systematic solutions there are to create efficiency, so they can really, for example, with customer care, so they can really focus on interacting with the customer versus creating shipping labels. That's like a really easy one to do.
Awesome. Thanks, Renee. Matt, how about you?
So I would say now more so than ever, brands really need to stress being flexible and diversification. Leaning on one marketplace to sell your goods or one 3PL with one warehouse really limits your brand solutions when issues do occur. So I would just take the time to really educate yourselves, maybe seek out some A/B testing, because at the end of the day, you want to create new opportunities and eventually look for new avenues of growth for your brand.
Yeah, and work with your 3PL to do so, because a lot of times there might be more flexible than you think.
Yep.
I think the last thing that I would add, and we'll probably wrap up here, I would suggest to start investigating or reinvestigating, if you've done so in the last 12 months, your technology stack, to start automating and driving those infrastructural changes and creating that diversification in your supply chain. So we're going to wrap up here. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining today. Thank you to Matt and Renee for sharing their advice. And Renee, really big thank you to you for jumping on and sharing your own insight into your business and how you have set up for success pre-COVID-19 and what you're doing to adapt within the supply chain. Really want to thank Trellis for the opportunity. And Matt and I are going to be in our booth answering additional questions for a bit if you have any. Thanks a lot, everybody, and looking forward to seeing you on the booth.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.